Captain's Vlog. I think this is the third one. It's almost been like a year since the last one, but I need to start doing these again. So, start date is July 9th, Gregorian calendar 2025, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So, I think the last time I had a video, I didn't even have this garage finished. Since then, I've insulated some, put up drywall, tried to organize things, make shelving, all the while, learning how to do this luthier shit. Yeah, I've been stupid about it for sure, in terms of my focus and like trying to do too much, but I do feel like my playing experience really drives what I want a guitar company to be, and what I want to be able to do in the market that doesn't already exist. And I don't feel like I have the time with my personal situation or whatever to just do this as like a hobby, in terms of like, I'll work on it a little bit here, work on it a little bit there, and then when it's done, I'll like work on the next one. This has been like so I feel like a survival game from the start. And then playing the guitar, something that needs to happen to keep my perspective on what I want to be doing correct. But it's been difficult because there's no real like answer to some of the questions I have. No one seems to care. That's fine. I understand. I may ask lots of questions like that. But the industry does seem to be completely categorically different than the classical instrument industry to a degree. One of those degrees being there's not really a standard for what it has to be an electric guitar. You can kind of just put a pickup on anything. The other thing being that it does have a weird sort of sense of these four main designs from the 50s and the early 60s that everything kind of seemed to just stem from. And if you go too far away from those designs, you get something that doesn't really look like a guitar. Even though in the the electrical guitar, there is no physical shape that is required to make it make a sound. The acoustic guitar has physics that govern its function, and the physics that govern the electric guitar's function don't really have a relationship to form of the materials. Really. They do comparatively. When you start to compare two different electric guitars, the shape now becomes something very drastic and different than in the acoustic world, because the acoustic world has to have a somewhat similar shape. The physics of a square built acoustic guitar will be very much different than a typical Martin shaped acoustic guitar, but it can't exist to some degree because it won't be able to function like an acoustic guitar. So this objective relative truth in the electric guitars means that every single electric guitar that is made can be made differently and still accomplish its general purpose. This is why I believe that the vintage guitars, besides having some sort of nostalgia and historical value, or even we could say cultural value, because a lot of recordings were made using these vintage guitars, so their sound is somewhat ubiquitous in recording music in terms of electric guitar. But again, the variation from vintage guitar to vintage guitar, especially if we look at like the Telecasters from 50 to 53, and I just became aware of these. This is just a great example. The things that they changed so much in 36 months, and yet these Telecasters, I think, are in some ways the paradigm of what all guitars are like kind of now, where you have different things that they were trying, different things that they did or did, differently or wrong. People have kind of swam in that direction to accomplish different goals now. The biggest hindrance on all of this and all of that is the fact that these guitars were designed first for factory production, and they have never kind of been ventured away from that. We don't really understand what it means to make a guitar by hand, an electric guitar by hand, in terms of like what it should look like, because now we're using hand materials. There's no thicknessing of tops in an electric guitar generally. There's no tap tests in electric guitars generally. Electric luthiers, or guys who assemble electric guitars, or girls, or whatever, they don't typically wind their own pickups. That to me makes fucking no sense. So I think there's some chance for this industry to change. I think it's going to have to be on the backs of different styles of music that need these new instruments, or at least that give musicians the confidence to do new music, or purely just feel weird or different and inspire something different. But personally, I'm very much geared up for, an orchestra of 35 electric guitars. Something like that to me sounds very interesting, but also very classical, because it's such a modular instrument. I can have a 6-string, you can have a 7-string. Bo Diddley can have a 3-string if we want him to, and Peter over here can have an 8-string, and like, we can all have different tunings on those guitars, just like a classical orchestra, but the same generic function, or the same generic physical machine governs our sound. Like an electric guitar quartet, name me one. I mean, like, name me a famous piece, and I understand, no one understands pieces of music these days, usually, generally. But I do believe with this social media platform, we now have a very easy way of producing 90-second, even if that's what it takes, 90-second, sonatas, or 90-second etudes, right? That like just do an idea. But we just, the guitar should be doing more guitar stuff. More guitar stuff. Why don't we have like a whole genre of music that's just guys doing weird machine metal music? Or why don't we have a whole genre of guitar music that's literally just people trying to sound like a saxophone? I didn't realize the guitar industry was $1 billion industry. And when you look at like how the industry is, it's just ran by people's eyes. No one's fucking playing these things. At least I would venture to wage, and this is even in my own house. I mean, I play them, but do I play them all consistently, equally? No. They're tools, but on average, they mostly seem to be collectible items, And the tools that become collectible are from people that did a lot of work with them. Like, it drives me nuts that we're saying the best instruments of all time are just going to be fucking locked away in some auction house storage or a museum. And I mean, I think pedigree is good, especially in this kind of craft thing. And so I really dig the whole Asher guitars, making those like Wolf copies and stuff, and replicas. That's the first example I've seen on the side of things that's like has hope. because, you know, Asher could pick somebody to continue on, and they could go and do that stuff. It'd be really cool. Anyway, I'll have to check back in with these because they're just going to be rants. They're not going to be too organized, but just a good way to like vlog, you know, rant it up. Maybe I'll mukbang something, but I don't know. Just play it by ear. But the goal is to kind of get these thoughts out and to have a place for them, but also just like, you know, it's like, I want this company to be good. I don't care about everyone having a Shelly and all that stuff. You know, I think that the vibe of like players and musicians, artists who make these things is the way of the future for bands. I think a garage band nowadays is going to have an internet business as well. And I do think that YouTube is the stage. I think we have venues, sure, for live shows, but I don't think touring as a musician is going to be or is the way to go when you can do YouTube shows. I mean, it's fun to tour and travel around, don't get me wrong. I think that's part of the vibe, but, you know, so much better use of our time to just make YouTube show and then, you know, throw a weekend's worth of shows someplace that a bunch of people can travel to or something. That, to me, that just makes sense. But also, you know, I could never get on a touring gig that have any, you know, validity. Anyway, all right, Captain out.